We have piled up our resources, I've consulted the Reddit gods, I've read some books, and now I, Adam Andrews, ambassador of Top 10 Nerd, am going to attempt to explain to all of you who want to know how exactly the timeline of DC Comics works with all its many, many changes. Buckle up, it's gonna be a doozy. It all started in what we are going to call the pre-crisis era. This era basically encompasses all of the original DC stories, beginning in 1938 with Action Comics #1, which gave us the Man of Steel, the world's first real superhero. This marked the official start of what's known as the Golden Age of Comics. For DC Comics, this age gave us Detective Comics #27 in May of 1939, which gave us Batman, All-Star Comics #3 in 1940, which gave us the Justice Society of America for the very first time with the Flash, Green Lantern, and Hawkman, and we got All-Star Comics #8 in 1941 that gave us Wonder Woman. This era flowed on into the Silver Age of Comics with 1956's Showcase #4, which introduced us to Barry Allen, a different version of the Flash, and 1960 giving us the Justice League of America for the first time. Now, I like to think this is where things start to get just a wee bit more confusing. You've now got classic Flash from the Golden Age and Barry Allen Flash from the Silver Age, and these two come face to face in The Flash #123 in 1961, creating the multiverse, with Golden Age Flash being from Earth 2 and Silver Age Flash being from Earth 1. The Silver Age also saw DC's very first interdimensional crisis in Justice League of America #21 from 1963, when the JLA meet the Golden Age's JSA for the first time. From here we move smoothly on to the Bronze Age of Comics, which gets a great little start when we get brought back to a darker version of Batman in 1970's Detective Comics #398, or The Secret of the Waiting Graves. We get some social commentary in the Green Lantern and Green Arrow team-up in Green Lantern #76 in 1970, we are introduced to DC's New Gods in their self-titled comic from 1971, and we even get the Teen Titans first appearing as the Junior Justice League, with their preview being presented in DC Comics Presents #26 from 1980. And that is a brief summary of the pre-crisis era. This is now where it all goes down a rabbit hole, so before I become Dorothy and jump on down there, make sure you slap that like and subscribe button if you like the format out of this new video. Alright, let's get down that rabbit hole. In the pre-crisis era, many of DC's characters existed independently of one another on alternate Earths. This all came to a head when the era finally came to an end in 1986 with the first major crisis. This major event was the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it was DC's first big reboot. It attempted to streamline continuity by eliminating this version of the multiverse and folding the characters who weren't retired into a single unified world. The 12-issue series takes the multiple Earths that had been established in the Golden, Silver, and Bronze Ages and has a lot of them destroyed by the Anti-Monitor, leaving only one Earth left. This surviving Earth had most of the Earth 2 heroes around during the time of World War II, and then most of the Earth 1 heroes would be the present day characters. Major characters had their origins retold with fixes that now aligned with the new DC Universe continuity. This leads us directly into the post-crisis era. This next stage moves us forward from 1986 and covers both the Dark Age and part of the Modern Age of comics all the way up until 2011. This was the period during which superheroes had their first major explosion of mainstream popularity, meaning that this post-crisis DC Universe became the main influence on cross-media adaptations that began to emerge, which by extension helped to cement this period as the most definitive version of the DCU in the minds of many, many, many people. This era began starting during the Dark Age of Comics, when we got really great stories like Batman the Dark Knight in 1968 and Watchmen in September of the same year that introduced us to another separate universe, meaning we're back into a multiverse again. 1986 also gave us Legends #1, where Darkseid attacks, prompting a new Justice League to form that would fight alongside the newly formed Suicide Squad. This is also the era that gave us the death of Superman in January of 1993. Now, I mentioned cross-media versions of DC stories, and DC Comics would show us that characters from shows like Batman the Animated Series could move into the DC Universe, with Harley Quinn making her arrival in the pages of comics in 1993. A year later, 1994 gave us Zero Hour, which would clean up some standing continuity issues with a story of a power-crazed Hal Jordan trying to remake the world in his image. The next age would be the previously mentioned modern age, which, I'm gonna be honest, just begins to kind of make things more confusing yet again, with a few more semi-minor crises and events. For example, we get Infinite Crisis in 2005, where some characters who lost their realities in Crisis on Infinite Earths come back to the DC universe with Superboy Prime and Alexander Luthor from Earth 3 trying to get their Earths back, creating a new crisis and the Earth referred to as New Earth, which is very confusing. A year after this, in May of 2006, we get the 52-issue maxi series called 52, which sets up a new standard for the way the multiverse is going to be set up in the DC multiverse going forward. In this story, Mr. Mind alters some worlds while also creating the new multiverse made up of 52 different Earths. 2 years later, in 2008, we got Final Crisis, which isn't actually technically the final crisis in DC Comics, like not the final last one. Basically, this is the story where Darkseid conquers the Earth and kills / time displaces Batman. And a year after that, we got the Blackest Night story where the villain Necron brings undead superheroes and villains into the Black Lanterns, resulting eventually in the Brightest Day story that sees a bunch of characters rebirthed. Midway through the modern age in 2011, the New 52 era began with the event named Flashpoint. In Flashpoint, Barry Allen Flash, who sacrificed himself in Crisis on Infinite Earths and reappeared through the Speed Force leading up to this event, wakes up in a reality that is not his own, the Flashpoint reality. And he has to use the Speed Force to change reality back to normal. When he eventually does this though, he actually creates Earth Zero, which is a lot like New Earth but also very different. This event brought the launch of 52 new titles, known funnily enough as the New 52. This was a near full reboot of the post-crisis DCU, complete with new origins for many of its major characters and teams, with Action Comics and Detective Comics starting back at issue number 1 with retold origins. The only two major exceptions to the new origins were Batman, whose history actually kind of carried on since the 40s with a few revisions, and Green Lantern. This New 52 modern age is technically the continuity that we're still in, except the unpopularity of a lot of the changes made with the New 52, the fans wanting to return to parts of prior continuities, and the confusingness of the reboot itself resulted in a number of elements of post-crisis continuity slowly seeping back into canon, with stories like Forever Evil in 2013, Convergence in June 2015, and DCU in August 2015. Now all of this came to a head after the events of Darkseid War in 2016's DC Rebirth, a soft reboot which began the process of formally reintroducing elements of post-crisis continuity back into the mainstream DC universe. The most notable of these was the post-crisis Superman, with Action Comics returning to the pre-New 52 numbering scheme, with the character being reintroduced and then merged with the New 52 Superman, who was no longer alive at this point, to take back his place within the main DC universe. It resulted in a hybrid continuity, which was still a continuation of the New 52, but also made it really confusing to know what the heck was and was not continuity. This post-DC Rebirth became the Prime Age era, that included stories like the awesome Dark Knight's Metal in 2017 and 2018, that introduced the Dark Multiverse, a flip-side infinite multiverse of all the bad things that can happen in the regular multiverse, Doomsday Clock in 2018 to 2020, which basically shows that Dr. Manhattan of the Watchmen has altered the DC timeline, editing key moments and characters out of reality in DC Rebirth, and it ultimately climaxed in 2020's Death Metal event, which officially got rid of the idea of separate continuities within DC, announcing that, pretty much, everything counts. So now, technically, everything is part of the same continuity, meaning the writers and the readers both get to decide for themselves what matters to them. Yes, you're right, that is confusing, and also frustratingly inconsistent. But it is recognizing the fact that in the real world, that's what we all really do anyways, picking and choosing what we like for our favorite characters and essentially ignoring the rest. Currently, DC followed up Death Metal with Infinite Frontier number 0, which basically set up the current status quo for most of the DCU's major characters. Reading that would give you a route into all the current major ongoing events, and the Infinite Frontier maxi series, which follows the big picture story leading to the death of the Justice League and whatever the heck they're going to do from this point on. And that's all you really need to know. I hope this video gave you some kind of relief when trying to understand the timeline of DC Comics. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe here at Top 10 Nerd. Nerd. I've been your host, Adam Andrews. You can find my socials down below, and until next time, peace out, nerds.